Good morning. Can you hear me? Yes, perfect. Good to see you here. Really happy to present for the first time at VMware Explore. I will present a lot of slides and a few demo at the end. So if you have any question, please hold it until the end, and I will be happy to answer to any question. Before going into the presentation, let me briefly introduce myself. So I've been working for ITQ now since 1 year and a half. I'm working directly with our customer, mostly on SDDC topic, and nowadays more and more on VCF. So let's start with a question. Do anyone knows when VCF 1.0 was released? Nope. Because there is no 1.0 version. So the first version was 2.0. It was in 2016. Basically, the VCF 1.0 was kind of the Everrack version, and the 2.0 for VMware, it feels more mature to release a product which already was in 2.0. And so if you take a look at what it looked like before, it was really simple, more simple than the SDDC manager that we know now. It was basically deploying your SDDC infrastructure, so vSphere, vSAN, then NSX comes, but it was far more simple than what we have. And basically the SDDC manager was able to interact with the physical resource to easy the bring-up process, and then on the logical resource to create some VRS suite deployment, and we had back in the days the integration with Horizon Suite. What we have now with the VCF bundle is far more complex. So first of all, you have the vSphere. So you probably all know what is vSphere and how it's the leading solution for all the virtualization for servers. Then after came the vSAN and the vVol integration. So basically, as you may know, the management domain is only on vSAN, and then for the workload domain, you can choose to go with external storage, and so, for example, with vVols. For the NSX, you can bring your own network and then do some overlay to easy the process to deploy new network. You probably already know how difficult it is to propagate a VLAN inside an enterprise. So with NSX and overlay, you have far more easy, and for the automation, it brings a lot of value. Then the SDDC manager is now kind of the new vCenter. You can interact with your own infrastructure for the day zero operation, for the bring-up process, but also all the day two operations. So in the future with VCF 9, there will be a lot of change, but nowadays you can, for example, rotate your or change your certificates, change your password for the whole infrastructure. The certificate management is really great value for us, because if you want to change the vCenter certificate, then the NSX, it's a lot of problems. Now with the SDDC manager, everything is integrated, and you can do it directly from the SDDC manager. Then you have the Tanzu stack, so we call it TKGS, now VKS. It's basically the ability to bring up some Kubernetes cluster inside a VM or inside your SXI and provide Kubernetes cluster kind of as a service. And to finish, the Aria suite. So currently you still have the integration with VRLCM, and then from VRLCM you are able to deploy the full Aria suite. And so all these components is the VMware Cloud Foundation. So I wanted to highlight that it's more than just a bundle, but there is really an integration and communication between all products. But as you may think, it's kind of complex to deploy VCF because of all this integration. So how can you prepare yourself to succeed in your first deployment? Is anyone know this Excel sheet? What? Yeah, not a lot. Okay. So these Excel sheets bring a lot of value. It's complex to use, but with this Excel sheet, you can select all the parameters that you defined for your deployment. So for example, choosing if it's vSAN ESA or vSAN OSA, what kind of lifecycle manager, if it's NSX federation, if it's stretch cluster. And depending on all the choice that you made into this first part, the Excel sheet will run a lot of things underneath to configure all the resources, the password, the network that you will need to deploy your VCF. So basically, all are locked. You must not unlock the document, otherwise the document is done. You should input in kind of the light orange. You should put inputs in this file, in these sheets, and for example, how many workload domains, the size of your vCenter, depending on if you know how many VM you will run, or if you run TKGS, you will need a specific size of vCenter and this kind of stuff. And then you will get some information and pre-completed information for your management domain, your workload domain, and then the interesting part is the solution deployment. Maybe you're already aware of VVS. So this is VMware Validated Solution. And so inside this Excel sheet, you have everything to deploy VVS and all the details like the service account that you should create, the integration with the other product, and this kind of stuff. It's also really interesting. I've often have the question, how can I size my management domain? How many vCPU should I need? How many RAM, etc. So depending on your host parameters, the RAM per host, the cores per host, and so on, you will select everything, the vCenter size, how many workload domain you will have, and then after that, you will have all the requirements for your management domain. One thing that I didn't say before diving into this Excel sheet, this Excel sheet is available on the VMware documentation for free, and anyone can access it without any account. So it's really good value for us for your first deployment. And the last thing that I want to highlight with this Excel sheet is, for example, you want to know how many VLAN do I need, what is the CIDR for the management network, and this kind of stuff. In the orange column, you need to put your value, but on the gray, this is the extract from the VVS recommendation. So if you don't have any clue on what kind of VLAN you need, the CIDR, and this kind of stuff, you have an example in the gray column. So this is really a good thing to start your first VCF deployment. I'm still using this document with my customers to prepare the deployment and to be sure that we've collected all the prerequisites. Then, if you're ready to deploy your first VCF, you probably don't have the hardware to go through the full deployment, and even though you want to try the VCF solution. So there is a really, really nice tool called Holodeck. Anyone here already used Holodeck? Good. So Holodeck is basically a lot of automation, a PowerShell script that gives you the ability to bring up a VCF inside a single ESXi host. So your VCF deployment will be a bunch of nested ESXi, and then on top of that, the script is able to deploy and to bring up the full management domain or even the workload domains. So what you need to provide, so what looks like the PowerShell script, it's doing during a lot of time that is running the script, deploying the nested ESXi, bring up the vSAN, bring up the NS6. You also have some tricks inside the script to consume less resources. So for example, for the management domain, by default, in a normal deployment, you will need to have 3 NS6 manager. With this script, it will only deploy 1 NS6 manager, and so it will reduce the consumption of resources. So what do you need for that? Basically, it's just a single host. So it's kind of a lot of resources, but it's manageable to find it. There is the good solution and the better one. It will depend on how many components you will need to deploy. For example, if you need to deploy the full Aria suite, you really need to go into the better solution because it will consume a lot of RAM. The bottleneck is really the RAM consumption. The host configuration is basically vSphere 7 or vSphere 8, whatever you want. And if you want to go really fast into the VCF deployment, you don't need to have your ESXi managed by a vCenter. It's far more easy. And how can you do that if you don't have any big server like that. So for example, my lab ran in the past on a OVH server. So it's basically a bare metal server. So I bring up some example on kind of the bare metal server that you can choose and the cost per month. What is really interesting is that you can book the server for 1 month, do your lab, and then kind of destroy the bare metal, and you're done. And with the holodeck, what can you experience? But basically, this is the full VCF experience. So for example, on the SDDC part, you can try to renew your certificates, rotate your passwords, deploy your first workload domain through the GUI or through Terraform or PowerShell script. Testing some PowerShell modules. I will go into that in the demo, but in the holodeck, you can try everything. That goes the same for the networking. You can do the NSX bring up, try the NSX micro-segmentation and go on. Which is also really interesting with the holodeck is that you can choose to go directly into the management domain fully deployed, but you can also ask just for a bunch of ESXi ready to bring up a VCF on top of that. So the script will deploy the nested ESXi, and then on top of that you deploy the cloud builder and then go into the full VCF deployment. And so if you continue, that's also a really good way to easily deploy a Tanzu environment. So deploy Tanzu Kubernetes cluster, doing an upgrade, doing a scale up or scale out, this kind of stuff. And to finish, for sure, you can deploy the Aria suite. But as I mentioned, you need to be really careful on the resources because VRLCM and the Aria automation, for example, consume a lot of resources. So now that you are ready to prepare for your first deployment, that you doing your holodeck to do your first deployment, you will go through your production environment deployment, but now how can you maintain the platform? I've seen that there is a lot of kind of gap in the product to be able to monitor the health of the product or to change the normal behavior of the product. So the first interesting thing is that I will share with you inside the GitHub, the VMware GitHub account, you have a lot of PowerShell scripts, and one of them is the health report. So these health reports run into a VM, and then with that you have a full health report for your VCF environment from the SDDC manager, the NSX, the SXI, and so on. And so you have the full health report, and then if you have some alerts, you have a alert report focused on what's wrong into your environment. So this tool is currently available on the VMware GitHub account, and so you can deploy it for free. And I've heard yesterday that it will be embedded into the new Aria operation version. So I think it's really great value for all the customers. And then to finish on really important topics, VCF, the main thing is to automate your infrastructure. So SDDC Manager, it could be your single point of contact and kind of the general commander of your infrastructure, the new vCenter or whatsoever you call it. But from the SDDC Manager, you are able to run some Terraform or some PowerShell modules. So the PowerShell module that I've screenshotted was based on a screenshot from the core.vmware.com, where we found a lot of really great resources. The website is no more available right now, but all the scripts that are listed here, as I mentioned, are all available on the GitHub page. And for this specific PowerShell script, I wanted to do a live demo. I hope that the demo gods are with me and that it will work pretty well. So let me switch. Cool. So I'm currently trying to switch to the good tab. Here we go. So what I wanted to show you is the PowerShell module to change the default password policy inside the VCF environment. So basically, I got a lot of requests from our customers that they want to use the SDDC password management functionality, but without the default password policy. So for example, they want to have another lockout policy or more character inside the password. So what you can do is install this module, and then when you install this module, you can first give it a try if everything is okay to run the script. So it checks all the prerequisites for the script, for example, the Power CLI version and this kind of stuff. And then from that, you are able to generate a JSON file. I have a bit of lags in the click, so sorry for that. Many colleagues recommended to record the demo and not do it lively, but I feel that it was a good idea, but now I'm not sure. So you need to type the version of your VCF deployment or your SDDC manager. So for now, for me, it's a 5.2.0.0. And then you have this JSON file where you can configure everything for each component. So basically, you have the VCI 5.2. So for example, there is also already some modification. And if I go to, I don't know, the NSX manager password policy, which is here, I can change the minimum length if I want lowercase. So for example, there is no restriction on the lowercase, but if I put 2, the password needs to have at least 2 lower case. And then for the uppercase, I already changed that for 2 uppercase. And when you're done with that, you only need to run, oh God. You need to run this command, the start password policy, and then you will give to the command all the details regarding the an administrator password, an administrator account, an administrator password, the folder where is your JSON file and so on, and then you run the PowerShell script, and from that you have changed the password policy inside your SDDC manager, and then use all the default functionality to rotate the password in all your components. To finish the session, I have a few minutes. Wanted to give you some key takeaways. If I find my mouse. So for the key takeaways for this session, I really wanted that before going into your first VCF deployment, it's really important that you know all the components each individually, because inside VCF, it's an integration of all of these components and with SDDC Manager on top of that. Preparing your deployment, I mean, it's always easy to deploy a VCF if you have everything prepared, the VLAN are correctly prepared, available on the switches, tagged correctly, and so on. And so if you have everything in these Excel sheets, you probably will have a success with your first deployment. If you want to play with VCF, I know that it's a lot of resource and it's difficult to put your hands on a VCF deployment. So holodeck is really a good solution. The lab that I showed you just before, it was a holodeck deployment on a kind of ESXi. And for the automation, there is a lot of available REST API and command embedded into the SDDC manager. But in the meantime, inside the VMware GitHub repository, as I already mentioned, there is a lot of PowerShell modules that will enhance your experience with the SDDC manager, and as I show you how to rotate the password and change the password policy. So that's it for me. Anyone has any question, remarks, or anything? Nope. Well, thank you for your time, thank you for your attention, and feel free to ping me if you have any other question after. Thanks.